Slow birth? Wow. That was tough for those few thousand years. Man. No, carbon dating, the bottom line is, doesn't work. And because of the variables in Earth's magnetic field, that's just one more element to show us that carbon dating simply does not work.
What the hell does the magnetic field have to do with the ratios of decaying carbon-14?
Some people say, well, the Earth has reversed its magnetism. No, it hasn't. They try to teach this in textbooks. It has not. What they find on the ocean floor is what they're referring to. They find areas of strong magnetism and weak magnetism. They don't ever find a place where it has literally reversed its magnetism. They say it goes through these cycles where it reverses. No. They find strong and weak magnetism. And that's simply because hot basalt loses its magnetism. So that's what they're really seeing, is areas of strong magnetism and weak magnetism.
What you're referring to is a geomagnetic reversal, evidence of which has been found in polar sediment. There are two types of geomagnetic fluctuations. The first is the one that I just mentioned, in which the magnetic poles reverse their positions. The second is called a geomagnetic shift, in which poles move to arbitrary locations but don't necessarily reverse. This accounts for the majority of the observed magnetized sediment. As for your statement that basalt loses its magnetism over time, well, that may or may not be true. However, it is wholly irrelevant because basalt is not the only type of rock on Earth. All time periods that correspond to geomagnetic fluctuations have rocks that are magnetized to the same degree, so our findings are consistent with the theory. Geology is not my area of expertise, and there are other YouTubers far more qualified than I am to give a full explanation of this sort of thing. I know enough about it, however, to debunk Eric's claim that there have been no reversals. This nullifies his other claim that the magnetic field's weakening is proof of a young Earth.
What about this one? The Earth today is spinning at about 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. But we got a problem. It's slowing down. The Earth is gradually getting slower and slower. That's a problem. Matter of fact, several times they have added seconds to the clock. They've had to add 1 second to the clock to have the clocks accurate. Wow, well, we're slowing down. Not by much. And if you go back just 6,000 years, no big deal. Adam and Eve might have had like a 24-and-a-half-hour day, okay? No big deal if creation is true. But you want me to believe that the Earth has been here for billions of years? Now we got a problem. Because the winds on Earth are created by the Coriolis effect because of the Earth spinning.
No. Winds are created by air moving from areas of high pressure to areas of low pressure. The Coriolis effect just deflects the wind to the left or right, depending on which hemisphere you're on. The Earth's rotation is not responsible for wind.
Well, you go back in time and get the Earth spinning a little bit faster. You go back just a few million years, the Earth would have been spinning so fast that the winds from the Coriolis effect would be 500 miles an hour.
Bullshit! The Earth slows down at a rate of 0.014 milliseconds every year. Multiply by 100 million years, and you get a difference of 14,000 seconds, or 4 hours. A day lasted 20 hours back then, and there would have been virtually no difference in the severity of wind 100 million years ago due to the Coriolis effect. And please, Hovind, if you can please show me the math that got you to 500 miles per hour, I would love to see it. For once, please show me some numbers.
That explains what happened to the dinosaurs. They got blown off, man. They couldn't handle that kind of wind. What about the Sahara Desert in Africa? The Sahara Desert is growing. Well, how long has it been growing? It's got a prevailing wind pattern causing it to grow about 4 miles a year. You go backwards in time from what it is today to what it used to be. The Sahara Desert started growing about 4,000 years ago.
True, the Sahara Desert began to grow a few thousand years ago. However, it began to grow closer to 10,000 years ago. In any case, what does the age of the Sahara Desert have to do with the age of the Earth?
Doesn't that fit perfectly with the creation worldview? It does. Because the creation worldview says 6,000 years ago, God created the heavens and the earth. 4,400 years ago, there was a flood that destroyed the world. It's real hard to have a desert underneath of a flood, okay? You don't call them deserts then, okay? So the desert had to start after the flood. You guys with me? Yes. Okay. So the desert has to be less than 4,400 years old, and that evidence sits perfect with what God's Word already told us. We have oil in the ground that is under tremendous pressure. Scientists that study the rock over the oil that's under like 20,000 psi, 20,000 pounds per square inch of pressure, they study the rock over the top of the oil and they find, you know what? The rock could only handle that amount of pressure for about 10,000 years.
The only scientific paper that agrees with this was written in the early 60s. Since then, we've learned that certain rocks, especially shale, are pretty much impermeable to liquid. In any case, if the oil deposits did manage to leak, the pressure would obviously be reduced and a natural equilibrium would be maintained.
After 10,000 years, the rock would crack, releasing all of its pressure. Well, then why do we still have oil pressure today? If the earth is billions of years old, if oil formed millions of years ago, like evolution claims, well then why do we still have oil pressure in the world today? I believe it's because plants and animals got buried in the flood 4,400 years ago and literally got squished into oil. Yeah. And we still have oil pressure today because God's word is true. It's only about 4,400 years old after the flood. You know, they say petrification takes millions of years to do. No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does, if you're going to make fossil fuels out of animals. Petrifying something like wood doesn't take very long, but it's well established that at least 10 million years under the right conditions are required for the type of petrification you're suggesting Noah's flood caused. At this point, I'm going to skip ahead because the video crashes for several seconds. Perhaps my computer was unable to handle his stupidity.
By that, you can tell how long it's been growing. Guess what? The Great Barrier Reef has been growing for about 4,200 years. Interesting.
You're lying, Eric. That coral reef took millions of years to form. A single coral under ideal circumstances will grow at a maximum of 1 inch per year. For coral reefs to form, in which the coral is cemented, the process takes 10 times as long. The Great Barrier Reef is not 4,200 years old.
If the earth has been here for 4.6 billion years, why hasn't coral grown all the way around Australia a couple times? I think this is evidence that fits perfectly with the creation worldview, which says about 6,000 years ago is when God created the heavens and the earth. 4,400 years ago, there was a flood that destroyed the world, and now here we are today. And the Great Barrier Reef is only 4,200 years old. Niagara Falls is eroding backwards. It's consistently eroding away at the rock ledge. When you study Niagara Falls, you'll find out it's only been eroding a 7.5-mile gorge, and they say about 9,900 years is the age that they came up with for Niagara Falls. Well, you throw one flood in there, and that makes up about half of it, and now the river has been eroding backwards since then. So yeah, I would say Niagara Falls is probably about 4,400 years old.
First, your claim is entirely dependent on the notion that a single flood could erode the base of the Niagara to such a degree that its real age is half of what it would be had there not been a flood. That process by itself takes thousands of years, with or without a flood. Second, what does the age of the Niagara Falls have to do with the age of the Earth?
Not millions or billions of years old. It couldn't have been. Guys, the evidence of the earth being young is obvious, and we look for the young coins. We don't look for the old ones. We look for the young evidences, not the old ones, okay? How about this? Oceans today are 3.6% salt. They could easily go from freshwater to 3.6% salt in less than 5,000 years. How come the salt content in the oceans fits consistently with the creation worldview and not with the evolutionary worldview? Because if evolution is true and the world's been here for millions of years, the ocean should be kind of like the Dead Sea right now. You shouldn't even be able to get in those things, man. That's how bad they should be, the amount of mineral content in the oceans.
You're assuming that oceans do not naturally lose salt. Salt is being removed from the oceans at about the same rate that it's being added by the world's rivers.
What about caves? You guys ever gone in a cave and gone spelunking? Gone into a cave, they got these stalactites and stalagmites. That is so much fun. Some of you guys are like, you're a geek. Okay, but I love going into caves and checking that stuff out. The problem is, a lot of people teach that the caves took millions of years to form. They say that just a couple inches of a stalactite take 1,000 years to form. Really? 1,000 years for just a couple inches. Okay? Well, here are some 50-inch long stalactites hanging underneath the Lincoln Memorial. excuse me, the Lincoln Memorial was built in 1922. Or was it? They knew Lincoln was going to show up here. Oh yeah, knew what was going on. No, stalactites and stalagmites don't take millions of years to form. They actually form very, very quickly. They shut down a cave, a mine where they were digging out for coal. They shut down the coal mine, went back 55 years later, and found a fully formed stalactites and stalagmite cave. A huge, huge area.
Oh boy, where do I begin? First of all, the age of stalagmites and stalactites says nothing about the age of the Earth. Second of all, you misquoted that article. It said that the formation of caves took millions of years, not the stalagmites and stalactites within them. And finally, the chemical process that created stalactites underneath the concrete Lincoln Memorial were different from the processes that created stalactites and stalagmites in caves made of natural minerals like limestone.
In just 55 years. The TB fountain up in Wyoming. I got to go to school in Wyoming at Jackson Hole Bible College.
An interesting side note, Jackson Hole Bible College is unaccredited. Your degree means just as much as your father's did.
And this TB fountain began just 100 years ago. And now it's huge. Absolutely massive, okay? At the current rate of erosion, the continent should have eroded flat 14 million years ago. In 14 million years, you should have no continents left, only water because of the erosion. Well, I see a problem there. We've got rock 300 times older than that, still above sea level.
I'm going to hold you liable for my medical bills, Eric. I just facepalmed myself so hard that I lost consciousness. You forgot to mention that earthquakes caused by the shifting of tectonic plates can result in valleys and mountains within relatively short geological time periods. This is how the Himalayas were formed. India crashed into Eurasia, and the largest mountain range in the world resulted. Earthquakes and erosion maintain equilibrium with one another.
Look, it's obvious. The world is young, not old. How come the very first forms of writing appeared just about 5,000 years ago?
What the hell does the birth of writing have to do with the age of the Earth? In any case, we have found cave paintings tens of thousands of years old.
Not millions of years ago. How come the oldest language that can be reconstructed is already modern and sophisticated? Where's our evolution of language?
Evolution doesn't necessarily mean that something becomes more sophisticated. Besides, evolution has nothing to do with language. The language did get more complex over time. The first written accounts were tallies to indicate numbers, presumably in ancient trade. Then cuneiform writing appeared, followed by the Phoenician alphabet that gradually evolved into many of today's languages.
We don't have that today. Our year 2000 was the year 4700 on the Chinese calendar. Interesting.
That's funny, because the Mayan calendar begins in 3114 BCE. Maybe humans were created out of an ear of corn plucked by the god Popol Vuh.
Hey, I believe that there are historical records that go back only about 6,000 years, which fits perfectly with the creation world view. The earth is not millions or billions of years old. I'm sorry. It's not. The evidence is in. The earth is young. You say, well, what about the dinosaurs? I thought they did live 75 million years ago. Ooh, that's a good question. What about the dinosaurs? We'll have to talk about that in another session. But for now, let's close with this. The evidence for a young earth greatly outweighs any evidence for an old earth. Thank you guys for being here tonight. Have a great evening.
Rate, comment, and subscribe, and let me know if you want me to follow him into Session 3.